because I've been thinking a lot about X and his passing, and I've been thinking a lot about it. And one of the things that it's a lot of people thinking about it, right? He had so many people who loved him and who followed him. And one of the things that stands out to me, I've been thinking about his life a lot, and I did a post on my Instagram, and is that he was so transparent as a human being, like forget about we don't even need to get into the music or anything like that. I mean, just like as a human, like he was so transparent, like his flaws, his good things, his bad things, his struggles, he just told his story, and I've been just watching old stuff and interviews, and he said something in one that was a real jewel. He said that your pride to not tell your story could be the reason you don't save someone's life. And that really hit home, because there's a fear within all of us of telling your story. It's scary, man. Like, to tell your real story, it's so scary. Like to tell I'm not saying that just to tell a piece of your story or something you went through, but to tell that deep story that you're scared to even think about because it's too hard. That's a level of transparency that you barely see with people. Just in general. Like if you have one person in your life or two that are that transparent, I think you're rare and lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Now you take someone like like Earl Simmons, like DMX, who became a superstar, and he still remained transparent. Like he still remained crystal. Like, this is who I am. I struggle with these things. I mean, for God's sakes, in the song we did, even in we couldn't put out on Slippin', we couldn't put out a dirty version because Grover Washington Jr. he restricted it with the sample clearance. But even in the dirty version, they insisted to bleep out a part, which was "look how that," and he goes, "look how that rock got him," because they didn't want people to know that this was earlier in his career, and they didn't want him to know that he actually struggled with crack, because that would be like something that would make people look at him differently.
Right.
But he didn't care. That's the point I'm saying. It's not to trash him in any way. It's for the courage to be. Think about that. You're in rap. Excuse me. You're in rap, which is like this highly show off image, external. And then here comes this guy who's brave enough to tell his story and say, in that song, he goes, "look how that rock got him." I mean, that's a level of not having pride, of bravery, and it's something we could all learn from, as humans. Like his story, beyond the music, which is why he's so impactful, because it's not even, music is one thing, and music is powerful, but beyond the music, his story of someone who was completely, left, just discarded, and to take that situation, just his perseverance alone is story enough. Just that alone, that he constantly kept overcoming obstacles. Constantly, you can look and you can kind of be like judgmental, and I want to talk about that too, because I have a friend of mine who sends me, he kind of spams me like Calvinist, fundamentalist, Christian stuff. And there's a guy ambassador, and he's got a video floating around talking about X. And it's really sad to see the immaturity of these Christians who pose as spiritually intellectual Bible experts. This guy gets on there, he spends about 9 minutes basically questioning whether X was a real believer, pulling up different scriptures, and then even
Oh man.
he doesn't say it, but he puts it out there to the point where like maybe it was his sin, that this happened. He doesn't say that. He's very careful. He's a very smart guy.
Sure.
But he ends it saying, we don't know, So that's like his PC, right? And you know what, man? One thing about X, he transcended that religiousness. He transcended. He wasn't out there. One of the coolest things that looking back now, one of the coolest things is he never proselytized. He never was like, you can be saved today. You can, he just shared his experience with the world. He had this relationship with Source, with God, and he just shared it with everyone. He prayed for people. He didn't say, pray for me. He did this sharing of his story. And, I think there's a lot that we could learn from him. And it is interesting, how people with these traumatic experiences, God uses that to teach all of us. He takes, these situations that many people will judge, but it's their own hardness of heart and their own religiosity, and that makes them judge people like that. And shame, I want to say shame on any, if you're in any Christian circle and they're passing judgment on X, shame on you. Because he was braver about speaking about Jesus than any of you. He went, and in the environment, you got to understand the environment, even in the company he's in, to be yourself to that level, it's very hard. I couldn't even be myself in around those people. I didn't have the courage to be Mike Gomez because you're so suppressed. There's so much ego. There's so much trying to control you. X has poems about the industry. The industry don't give about you. And he has a funny one where he goes and he says, he's like, and I'm like, yo, he's talking about the industry. And he goes, and it's a very short, it's like 3 lines, the whole poem. And he's like, and I go, yo, where you going? And they're like, yeah. And he's right there. And the point of that, a lot of people will not catch that, but I almost know who he's talking about.
I'm sure.
And the point, I know exactly who he's talking about because that person yabbed me so many times when I was talking about something else. They do not care at all about you. And that's another thing, I want to talk about that too. The industry, the capital, I'm going to kick the system's ass today, right, Derek?
Please do.
The system of music. There's another rapper right now, Black Rob, and he's in a terrible spot, And this guy was on Puffy's label. This guy, and he's not the only one. Craig Mack, he passed away, and they chew you up and they spit you out. They use you. Now X was a particularly strong person who could endure being that of use like that in the industry. and he's a very rare individual, very rare individual. I'm like so sure, you know, how I will never meet anyone like that again, and there will never be another one. It's not even something to imagine. Like if you ever someone deserves to be slapped if they say you're the next X. Let's put it that way. Like they need to be smacked and kicked out the business. Don't ever say that. There's never gonna be one. And another thing too, he spoke for the voiceless, and that is like, you know, and he says it. You know, like I was reviewing a lot of things and stuff that I forgot that I'd seen. He says in another one, he says, you know, he's giving advice to somebody, and he's saying, be the voice for the voiceless. And he understood how scared most of us are to speak our truth. He had this special understanding that many will not speak up. They're in the same situation, and no one's going to speak up for them, and they're not even going to speak up for themselves. So he took that on, and you know, it's fascinating. You know, and I want to condemn again. You know, any like very religious circles, or you know, if you're questioning his salvation, shame on you, because you don't. If you're doing that, you don't understand what love is, and you don't understand the first thing of source of God, of who. You may not even love yourself. If you're thinking that, I'm gonna go that far to say, if those are your thoughts, you're probably questioning your own salvation. You're probably questioning if you might not even know what it is to love yourself. You're that far, and I'll be bold enough to say that you're that far from God if you're questioning his salvation. You don't understand the first thing about God's love, you know. And that's my spiel, man. You know me, Derek. I thought about this all week, and I've been struggling with it, and that's where I'm at with his passing. And you know, my condolences to his family, and I bet you right now, you know, there's probably a struggle between family and industry right now. That's just the business is you know, is terrible. You know what I'm saying? Like I told you the other day, someone reached out to me. I don't even want to reach out back because I don't want to play in that mud, in that dirt. You know, if I had to, I guess I would, but it's not something you want to do. You know, and my heart goes out to his family, because they're probably fighting that battle that he fought. Now they have to fight it for him. Right. They got to take on what he would fight against the industry to keep his message pure. To not put money first, to not just be a commodity. The family has to do that now. They have to take that burden, and they never had to, because he took it. And if there's any, you know, that's a sad part of this, you know, that's a sad reality. Yeah. And I really hope, you know, that they do right by his family, because I've seen other situations, you know, like when Pun passed away, like Fat Joe was like supposed to be his twin. He completely neglected Pun's family. You know, his son was an amazing rapper. Not one time did Joe lift a hand to help him. You know, it's a cold business, you know, and I can say that stuff because I don't really care. Yeah. You know, like people can't say that. What I just said, producers can't say that. Other artists can't say what I just said. But I can say it because I don't depend on music for my livelihood. I've been far out of that game. And I can say the truth. And that's one of the most beautiful things about not being stuck in the business. I can tell it like it is. And that's a fact, you know. And I really hope they don't do that to his family, man, because this guy gave a lot to a lot of people, man. A lot of people became something because of him. And I hope that one of them has a conscience. One of them. You know, someone out there fight for him. Somebody out there in the business. Do the right thing. That's my plead. You know, do the right thing for his legacy, for his family. Like, not just the right thing to make his album blow up and make sure people, you know, play his music. No, I'm saying, like, do the right thing. Like, he gave you all a lot. Make sure you take care of his family. That's to me what we should be thinking about, and not just being, selfish, because he wasn't really like that. Like, he was, I watched a video and someone said that, I wasn't friends with him like that. We were like, it was like a professional relationship, like we hung out like maybe twice, like just one time, me and him. And, like I mentioned that on Instagram, like he took me out real quick, and, and he was driving. He's a crazy driver. And, he's, just like, yo, what's up? Like, I'm just like overwhelmed by that. Like, I'm an HSP. So I'm a highly sensitive person. So that's just blowing me away. And I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this again. And, so, it was like, a blessing for me, to just have known him. And also, I said this on my Instagram, but I want to say it again on our show, because this has a lot to do with what we talk about. I didn't know, like, when I made that beat, it was 4 years before, I've done like, 3 songs with him, but, there's Slippin is the song, like, basically of his career. And I didn't know, and it's the one that's hitting, like I watch it and I can't, when we played it and before we got kicked off, thanks a lot for kicking me off for playing my own song, by the way, internet, and we had to log back on, I'm holding back tears, and it's like, and I've seen it a million times, it's my song. And there's just something special about it. And what I was basically saying is, I didn't know. I'm going through depression in my parents' house in the basement. I'm making beats, and I don't know what I'm gonna do in my life. I was trying to do a little independent label. I'm like in the underground scene, and I'm like, am I gonna, I got to start figuring out how am I gonna, am I gonna get a job? Am I gonna do? I was working at a job I didn't like, and I'm like, am I gonna like just work a job, or am I gonna be able to do music? And I'm like going through this like early 20s, what I think anyone goes through in their early 20s, because you really got to fixate on how you're going to feed yourself and how you're going to take care of yourself and grow. And I made that track, and 4 years later, I hit play on a DAT machine. Next thing you know, I'm in the studio. Next thing you know, we're mixing it down. Next thing you know, Def Jam clearing the sample like that same night. Next thing you know, everyone's like, this is the single, and everyone's excited, and everyone's like, who did that? And it was my first, basically my first night in the studio with Rough Riders signed, and it was a big moment. But what I'm trying to say is you don't know, you might be a musician out there, and you're just making something right now, and I know other stories like that. Like I saw the Hotel California story. Someone had a demo on a cassette, and that kind of spin the whole thing. It was like kind of this rhythm. You don't know what you're gonna do and how it's gonna affect people, and no one knows until it happens. Until DMX just passed, I think. And I want to say something too about like energy and when people pass away, there's this thing going around about flowers. Give them their flowers while they're alive. And people will say, oh, well, now all of a sudden everybody loves X, now that he's dead. But I want to speak to that, because I had to question that, throughout this process, even for myself. And I believe, and here's where, Dr. Ivan will probably shut me down, but I believe strongly, because I've seen too much, that when someone passes away, something happens. Something that we don't understand, something bigger than all of us, something where their energy or their essence and everything that they became or why they were here, I believe gets released to us all. And I believe that those close to the person receive that. And in someone like him, there's millions close to him because of the music. So the release is that much greater. And then you start, I believe that it gives you a clarity about the person that you couldn't get. It's not that people are cold, that they're not giving flowers, you know. And people shouldn't be forced to give flowers when, because it's an ego thing. Like, oh, give me my flowers. Nah, you get your flowers when you get them. Live, dead. That's not something that should be forced or manipulated or guilted into. You get them when you get them, if you get them. That's the way they should work. Not this whole cultural thing that give me my flowers when I'm alive. Because there's something about those flowers after you pass away. They're different. They're spiritual. They're more profound.